So I'm a recovering awkward person, and most people watching are also recovering awkward folks. And I was wondering if you could make us feel better. This is an absolute question where I'm pushing an agenda. I'm pushing an agenda on you, which is, have you met a lot of these amazing, successful people? Have they been a little awkward? Are they introverts? Are they extroverts? And is awkwardness okay? I'm hoping you're going to say yes.
Awkwardness is awkwardness to me is one of the most wonderful traits that we have. I am an awkward person. I know, please believe me,
Me too.
I am an introvert by
Mm.
by very core.
Hello, hello, YouTube friends. Okay, today is going to be a really good, juicy interview. I just spent the weekend devouring a book, and it is from the amazing Guy Raz, who you probably know from NPR or some of his amazing podcasts, How I Built This, Wisdom from the Top, and The Rewind on Spotify. He's also the co-creator of the acclaimed podcast TED Radio Hour and the children's program Wow in the World. He's received the Edward R. Murrow Award, the Daniel Shore Journalism Prize, the National Headliner Award, and the NABJ Award, among many others, and was a Neiman Journalist Fellow at Harvard. And he is the author of a new book, How I Built This, which I absolutely loved. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that generous introduction.
Oh my gosh, it is easy. I probably could have gone on and on, but I want to dive into so many things. And the biggest one is you have this incredible viewpoint of successful people. You've interviewed entrepreneurs and leaders and successful business people. And I was wondering, not just about their patterns of success, which you talked a lot about in How I Built This, but is there a pattern to successful personalities? Have you noticed of all these different people across different industries, is there a personality or a charisma that you've noticed?
What I've come to realize is that there are two things. The first is success is a relative term because some of the most successful people I've interviewed are not the wealthiest people on the planet. A great example of that is Jimmy Wales, who invented Wikipedia. He created it as a nonprofit. He didn't make lots of money off of it at all. In fact, very little money. And Sal Khan, who invented Khan Academy. I mean, had he wanted to be a multi-billionaire or millionaire, he could have been. But he created this nonprofit that now serves 20 million people around the world every month. So success is a very relative term. It doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean fame. It really means, to me, it means personal fulfillment. That is the measure of success. And what I've come to realize, the second thing I've come to realize is that it is neither preordained nor is it an inherent trait. In other words, successful people don't have any natural traits that make them more disposed toward quote unquote success. They struggle, they fail, they learn, they are curious, they get knocked down and they get back up. And so to a large extent, success and what that means is really a personal choice. It's a choice to decide to be curious about the world around you and to be open to new ideas, to making mistakes and learning from them and getting back up and fighting to live another and fighting to fighting for another day.
It's interesting you say that because I've noticed that the times where I've felt most successful in my life haven't actually come from the awards or the accomplishments. They've come more from states of being, like sitting on the porch with my daughter or, being in a car ride and singing with my family. And that they always take me by surprise. I was wondering, did you have a moment where, because you've had so many successes, where you finally felt like, I'm successful now? And did that have to do with an accomplishment or a state of being?
It's a great perspective. Look, throughout my life and career, I've had many, many failures, which at the time were very difficult. Failures like, my feeling like my career was derailed. I was a journalist for most of my career and I had different ambitions than I do now. And what I thought was important were certain jobs and positions that I thought were everything. And when I didn't get them or I wasn't selected for them, they were crushing defeats and low points. I will say that as I've gotten older and more experienced, um, I can sort of step back and realistically say I have had some successful moments in my career, which I'm very proud of. But I don't think that the idea of success is an end point. I mean, we all have successes and failures in our lives, and often simultaneously. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs I have interviewed have been failures, self-admitted failures in their personal relationships because they've made so many sacrifices to be quote unquote successful. Sometimes people are perceived to be successful externally, but internally they're haunted by personal failings.
Mm.
So it's not one or the other. It's a series of complex relationships that we all navigate. And the idea is that we can all be successful and also feel like we're not successful at the same time. That's okay. I think for me, um, I understand at a baseline level that I have had success in my life, but that is also fleeting. And where I really try and focus the areas where I want to be successful are really in my personal life. As a parent, as a father, I have two children, 9 and 11. And if they say to me in 30 or 40 years, if I live that long, I hope I do, Dad, you're a great dad. You helped us become independent adults. That truly would would overshadow any success I could ever have in my life.
Mm. And hopefully you don't have to wait that long.
I hope
Hopefully,
hope not.
hopefully they can tell you that
Right.
sooner.
Right.
Hopefully they can tell you that sooner. Speaking of kids, I would love to talk about this. When you've created programs for kids, you've created programs for entrepreneurs, you've created programs for consumers. You also now have the experience of writing a book. And one thing I found when I listen to your podcast, I'm incredibly engaged. When I was reading your book, I was incredibly engaged. And I thought to
Thank
myself,
you.
when you're creating content, are you thinking about rules for engagement? Are you thinking, okay, I noticed in how I built the book, there was a story with nugget. I was wondering if that was purposeful, and if it's the same with your audio content versus your written content.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. Yes, I do. I mean, look, as a consumer of content myself, I appreciate beautiful writing and complex ideas. And, I love reading complex writers but I also love reading Dan Brown too, because who's a very smart guy, by the way. But
Yeah.
there's a reason why his books are very compelling. Even John le Carre, because there's movement and there's really um, compelling plot. And I am driven by narrative. I think that narrative is one of the most powerful ways to connect people with ideas because they're not abstract, they're real. Like when you hear about Sarah Blakely going door to door selling fax machines, you can imagine yourself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
She's now, of course, the founder of Spanx and the youngest self-made billionaire in US history. But we go back in the story and she takes us to that time in her life where she's going door to door selling. Do you want to buy a fax machine? Are you interested in a fax machine? That we can connect with that. And when I think about content, whether it's How I Built This or the book or Wow in the World, my kids show, I think about the person who is listening has a limited amount of free time in their day.
Mm-hmm.
We have roughly 14, 16, let's say 16 waking hours in the day. And for most of us, maybe 4 at most, 5 of those hours are quote unquote free time when we get to cook our dinner or we're commuting at a normal time, or maybe we just have it to ourselves. Maybe we're exercising. And
Mm-hmm.
I am asking you and anybody listening or watching to give me an hour of your time, whether it's for my show or my book. Now, if you're asking me to give you an hour of my time, that time is very valuable because I have a limited amount of time to spend with my kids and to do my job. And so time is really valuable. So I want that time I'm giving you to be really meaningful. And so if I'm asking you to give me your time, I have to give you something that you will walk away from that hour saying, that was really worth my time. I learned something, or I was inspired,
Yeah.
or I was motivated, or I was moved, or that was memorable. And so I really do think about that when I create content. I really think about the person who's going to consume that content.
Hmm. I think that's absolutely right because narrative is what hooks us, right? When we start a story, we're like, well, how does that go? How does that finish? And so I absolutely felt that both, I feel that both in your podcast and your book. I have a question about stories, and this is a really hard question. So if you want to just be like, nope, I can't do it, it's too hard. So when I was writing Captivate, I had this kind of Rolodex of stories, and they were all like little darlings to me, right? Like they were all precious and beautiful and wonderful and important. And of course, I couldn't include all of them. So I was wondering, was there a story that you wish you could have fit into the book, but you didn't? And do you want to share it now as a sort of like bonus?
There's so many stories I wish I could include in the book. In part, I couldn't include them because I finished the manuscript last November.
Oh, forever ago, a lifetime ago.
And since that time, I've done, I don't know, we've done, 80 more episodes of how I built this, and a spin-off resilience series. So many stories I wish I could have included in the book, including the story of Sal Khan, or the story of Jamie Siminoff and Ring, or Nancy Twine and Briogeo. So Nancy Twine,
Okay.
an amazing young woman. Her mother grew up in West Virginia, one of many children in a very poor family, was the first one to go to college. She's an African-American woman who went on to earn a PhD and an MD, became a family physician on Long Island, and raised two children mainly on her own, Nancy and her brother. Nancy went on to become a young trader for Goldman Sachs out of college. Her mother, and she and her mother were very close, would see each other every weekend. Her mother was tragically killed in a car accident a few years ago, and it forced Nancy to reassess her life. Did she want to be a Goldman Sachs trader and, fight her way through the rat race? While she was going through her mom's papers and putting them in order, she came across some of her mom's old formulas for skincare lotions and other products. And she always knew her mom was a tinkerer.
Mm-hmm.
And it really inspired Nancy to think about whether she could do something like that on her own. And she began to think about the problems she had in her life. And one of the problems was she could not find natural hair care products that were non-toxic, that were clean, and that worked for her hair, because she is a Black woman and her hair texture was also different. And she wanted something that would work on all kinds of hair textures. So she decided on nights and weekends to begin tinkering and testing out products. And she knew nothing about this, about the industry. She ended up cold calling laboratories across the country until she found one that agreed to kind of work with her for a little bit of money. Nancy didn't have much to work with. And ultimately, she created a brand called Briogeo. Briogeo is now the fastest selling hair care product on Sephora. She launched it 5 or 6 years ago, and she didn't quit her day job at Goldman Sachs for 2 or 3 years while working on this product. It's a story of incredible perseverance, because she knew nothing about the industry, and real research and hard work. She spent a lot of time digging in and learning, and ultimately about pursuing something that she wanted to do on her own, that really fulfilled her professionally and also spiritually, because it's connected to her mother. And it's just one of many stories I wish I could include in the book, because Nancy is like us. She didn't have a whole lot of money to work with. She didn't have the connections. She just had this vision and this dream, and she pursued it. And that's really the essence of what How I Built This is about.
Man, oh gosh, I knew you were going to have a good one in there. I feel like also those are the ones that whatever one came front of mind is what people need to hear right now, right? Sometimes I reread books and I'm like, oh, I don't even remember this story, but I needed to hear it right now versus when I read it the first time. So thank you for sharing that little bonus extra story. I want to talk about the Stacy's Pita Chip story, which I loved and found so inspiring. And I won't give away too much for those people watching, so you can go actually read it because it's amazing. And what I wanted to ask was about pivots. And I think that right now, especially, people are thinking a lot about pivoting their professional life, pivoting in their personal life, making big changes. And I was wondering if you found similarities between the people you've interviewed with their business pivots and their personal pivots, and if you had any advice for the rest of us on how we can approach those pivots really successfully or holistically.
I mean, Stacy's Pita Chips is a great example because you can imagine, Vanessa, and I can imagine, you don't need a computer science degree or an advanced degree to make pita chips. It's something that we can figure out how to do. And Stacy
Yes.
had a pita sandwich cart in downtown Boston. And with the leftover pita, she started to toast it at night and then hand out pita chips to people who came for sandwiches. Well, that turned into a business that was eventually sold for $250 million to PepsiCo. Stacy's Pita Chips. Now, imagine her business was a pita sandwich cart. The pita chips were what she made to give away. It
Free.
wasn't the core product,
I know.
right? It's by the way, if I could give my book away, I honestly would because I can't because of the economics of book publishing. People have to buy it for $20 or whatever. But I would give it away like Stacy gave away the pita chips. Well,
Totally.
eventually, people were coming to her cart and they were saying, "Hey, where are those pita chips?" And so she started to sell them for $1. And then eventually, people were just coming for the pita chips, not the sandwiches. Her customers were saying to her, "We don't care about the sandwiches. We want the pita chips." And that really sparked this idea of, wait a minute, maybe that's the business, not the pita chips. That was the pivot. The pivot was driven by her customers. Same story with Slack and other businesses that started out as one thing and became another thing. Slack started out as a massive multiplayer online game. It was called Glitch. The company wasn't called Slack. Stuart Butterfield wanted to be a gamer, but that game failed. And while they were building the game, they were also building what was Slack, which was just an internal messaging system, not a product. Well, that was the product. So that happens all the time. You may have an idea and then part of your idea is what actually your customers or your clients are interested in. And you're thinking, that thing? Really? That's the thing you want? But
Yeah.
actually that is the thing that really resonates. And sometimes it happens that way, and sometimes it's clearer. What we're seeing now with a lot of brands and a lot of companies that are really battling this economic situation and this pandemic is they are thinking radically. I call this a concept radical necessity. It's a time where you have to be radical and you have to think of all options and all possibilities. One of the exciting things about this moment is that it's an opportunity for anybody who works for a company, who has their own business, or is even thinking of starting their own thing, that you have no choice but to really do bold things that in an ordinary situation could take weeks, could take months or years to mount. One simple example of this is the company Zumba. It's a fitness company.
Yeah.
Their fitness instructors cannot teach classes because fitness centers are closed all around the country and the world. So what did Zumba do? They launched an online platform that enables Zumba instructors to teach Zumba classes and to charge on this platform. Normally, if they wanted to create a video platform like this, it would have taken them 2 years. A marketing campaign, meetings, strategic rollout. They did it in 6 weeks. It was imperfect. It had flaws, but they put it out there. It was good enough. And today, it is actually transforming the lives of thousands of Zumba instructors who are making more money teaching online classes through this platform. And Zumba is not taking a cut, by the way. They did this to sustain this, to sustain their Zumba instructors. It's just one example of radical necessity. And so I think a lot of people watching, if right now is the time to come up with bold ideas. Maybe last year you were afraid and people would say, no, we can't do this, or here's why this isn't going to work, or how are you going to get that done? Forget that. You've got to toss out the window. Now is the moment where you've got to put out a bold idea even if it's not perfect, because that is what is going to separate the businesses that succeed and that are sustainable and that come out of this crisis stronger and more resilient than the ones that fail and collapse.
Mm. Okay, I want to call this out for everyone listening. We need to hear this right now. Is one, also, it takes tremendous internal flexibility. If you're, for Stacy's Pita Chips, she had to say, wow, my entire business is this cart. This is a totally different business.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of resilience, endurance, and flexibility. And those are things I think we underestimate. And the second thing you said about doing our bold idea now, I have seen in all my virtual trainings and all of our classes, people's barriers are down in a way that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
So I think that we have this amazing opportunity. I have one more question for you. So I'm a recovering awkward person, and most people watching are also recovering awkward folks. And I was wondering if you could make us feel better. This is an absolute question where I'm pushing an agenda. I'm pushing an agenda on you, which is, have you met a lot of these amazing, successful people? Have they been a little awkward? Are they introverts? Are they extroverts? And is awkwardness okay? I'm hoping you're going to say yes.
Awkwardness awkwardness to me is one of the most wonderful traits that we have. I am an awkward person. I know, please believe me.
Me too.
I am an introvert by very core. I do, in normal times, big live shows with thousands of people in the audience. It's hard for me. I've been on the Tonight Show and done some really high profile media engagements, and I get nervous every time. Now, I've gotten much better at it over 20 years. But what I find, and what I've found with so many founders, is as they begin to hit little milestones, it might be, with Jim Cook of Sam Adams, the first time a bar decided to sell his beer, and then another bar decided to sell his beer. Or Michael Dell. Michael Dell is one of the most awkward people you will ever know. And he's created one of the most incredible tech companies in the world, Dell Computers. So many, Bill Gates, so many founders are incredibly awkward, but they find their charisma once they begin to have these little wins over time. And it becomes easier and easier. It is a practice. We all have the capacity to find charisma. I have charisma not because I was born with it, but because I learned how to have charisma. And it becomes easier. You know me. Many of your viewers know me. And so that makes it easier for me to be charismatic, right? And so 10 years ago was harder for me. 5 years ago was harder for me. It's a process of, as you become more of a leader, as you have these little wins, whether you're working inside of a company or doing it on your own, you find the charisma. It happens. It comes naturally. It's a practice. It takes work and effort. But I can tell you from experience, so many. I can name so many. Jerry Morell of Five Guys, very awkward, incredible, wonderful man. Jake Burton Carpenter, the legendary Jake Burton Carpenter who invented snowboarding and the Burton snowboards. Awkward, weird guy, an amazing person. Love him. He's passed on, but so many of them. Even the late Kate Spade, who was just a wonderful person, was on the show. Awkwardness is real. It's part of, I think all dreamers, all people with a world-changing idea or disruptive idea, they have some awkwardness in them. And that's important. Make it work for you.
Okay, that was your answer exceeded all of my expectations, because I don't know about people watching, but I just got such relief, which is that it's not just something you have to work around. Maybe it actually means you're doing something right.
Yes.
So baby steps, small wins. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Everyone, please go buy this book. It is so inspiring, but it also is informative. And this is whether or not you want to start a business or not. It's a way of thinking that I wish everyone had. I wish, again, like Stacy's Pita Chips, it could just be given away for free. We're going to put buy links in the description below. How I built this. Guy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Hey, I want to tell you one more thing. You are amazing. The question is, do you know how to share it? I'd love to help. I save my very best tips for my insider subscribers. Subscribe for free at scienceofpeople.com.
I know your inbox is sacred, so I promise to send you only emails you will love. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap the bell to know when my next video is coming out.